All right, Dr. Kyle.
Hey.
It's excited to be here.
Mr. Luke.
What are you doing in town?
I'm here for the Fishbone Fundamentals course. It is May something.
What, 15th?
I don't
16th?
know. 16th, 17th.
Yeah.
Does it matter?
No,
the days
not
run
really.
together.
Somewhere in May.
Who knows when the person listening to this or watching this is doing those things?
Yeah.
We never know.
For sure.
But here for this course, and we thought, hey, what a good opportunity to come to this amazing, immaculate, beautiful podcast studio.
Thank
and,
you.
shoot a podcast. And, in the spirit of HIP and Neon are coming together, we thought, why don't we look at the things that HIP has been good and maybe not so good at, and the same with Neon Canvas, and talk about it.
Yeah, be open and real, show actual results. And so I'm excited to be talking about paid ads and what works and what doesn't. And I think everyone will be a little surprised.
I think so.
Obviously, moving forward with what we're doing with Neon and HIP, partnering with this new brand and new identity, we'll be curating the Grow Ortho podcast together.
Right.
So that's exciting. I think we've come up with a lot of meat, new topics, and just a lot of value where we can both kind of curate the content and bring a lot more perspective to the program and the guest and the topics that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, and this is one of our reasons. We had three kind of big pillar reasons for combining companies. One of those was to combine around education and to combine around podcasting, because we think we can do more and do better, do it more efficiently to the benefit of the orthodontic profession, namely, but also to healthcare in general by working together.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the same perspectives on everything.
Which is good.
Which is good, yeah. But we have similar enough perspectives that it's been cool. It's already been cool. It's already borne fruit as we talk through these issues. And so today, we're talking through media buying. Right?
Media buying. Yeah. Paid ads.
Paid ads. That's the term that people are like, what's media buying? Paid ads.
Yeah. And I mean, I think largely we're going to talk about digital, but as we get into it, we could talk about offline strategies too. I think fundamentally we have approached paid ads a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And maybe we can just start there.
Okay.
So, let's talk about Neon Canvas and also your viewpoint. And, this is unique, obviously, since you are an orthodontist. You've been able to see firsthand how it works and have your own kind of philosophy on that. Yeah.
So I think the type of business that Neon Canvas is, the type of marketing agency that Neon Canvas is reflective of the sort of persona that our practice at Saddle Creek Orthodontics has always had and that has evolved into. And that makes sense because we were, effective number one client and first client for Neon Canvas. It's literally started in our back office. And what that is sort of lifestyle practice. Like our practice, it's 2 locations. I have 1 associate. We'll do around 4.5 to 5 million. So it's a big practice, but we're not trying to grow to 7 locations. We're not trying to grow to 10 million. Pretty happy with kind of the relative size of that practice. We're in 2 affluent suburbs of Memphis. So that's our practice.
And why'd you build it that way?
Well, we built it from scratch. And so there was another time in my life where I was a startup practice. And, I was working with Alex, who's, co-founder of Neon Canvas at a different company. And that was, I was their first SEO client. And so we were sort of evolving these systems and creating these systems on the go. And it's not to say that we aren't willing to do things differently, but I think getting around to the point, the fact that Neon Canvas has been more focused on Google ad strategies and long-term focused SEO strategies, or search engine optimization strategies, is reflective of kind of the practice that we started Neon Canvas with, in effect. And so I think what's interesting is that my perception of HIP has always been, well, they do a bunch of Facebook ads, or they do ads that are sometimes built around discounts or something that gets attention in the market.
Yeah.
And for us, like our practice, lead intake wise, even though we have systems to help with that, if you create too many leads that aren't good, it wears the team out.
Yeah.
So let's maybe talk to that. Maybe give us HIP and why it does more Facebook and how that works.
Yeah. And, the thing that has given us the brand and the prominence that we have within ortho has also kind of been, the Achilles heel to some degree, which is interesting. And I'll kind of go back to the beginning and just, you talked about how Neon started in the back of your practice. We started in healthcare in orthopedics, actually. Long story short, orthodontist who most people know, Ben Fishbein, heard about us. And, we kind of courted each other for about a year. I think it was early 2016 is when we started running Facebook ads. And back then, Facebook was a lot different. I mean, you could target religion, you could target certain square footage of homes. It was kind of like the wild.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was like the Wild West.
Well, the targeting of people by those things, that's not awesome. I don't want to get a letter. I don't want to get a letter in the mail about it. But it was awesome from a productive standpoint. Yeah.
From a business pinpointing a specific avatar, it was awesome. Now, the way they've changed the algorithm, they say can even be more accurate for a buyer, but still it's kind of nice to have that control, right, in the platform. But we just started to see massive success. I mean, I would get texts from Ben and Amanda at like 9 p.m. at night and like, look at all these leads, and it was just pouring in. Well, it's like when you find success, you kind of project that, and like, oh, well, it can work for you and it can work for you. And largely it has. But what we figured out as we've grown is there's a lot of practices where that will turn them off. Just like you said, if you generate too many leads, maybe even not necessarily bad leads, just leads that need to be nurtured.
Yeah. If
the team and systems aren't set up for that, it's like, why do I want to nurture people when I could just have buyers? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, certainly as you work further down that, if you're also generating some bad leads on top of that, it becomes very frustrating. But what we've seen for practices who do want volume, who do want to grow aggressively in the right market, now I'll call them meta ads, so Facebook and Instagram, it's the only way from a digital paid ad strategy to hit those types of growth numbers. Within 15 months, there's about $3.8 million in new production generated just from meta ads.
Crazy.
That would be very hard to do with an organic SEO strategy or even Google. And the thing is, and we can talk about this, is Google and Meta are wildly different. You don't go to Meta and search for an orthodontist. You go to Google and do that. And so naturally, yeah, why wouldn't you want to kind of focus on that platform? Well, search volume can be limited. It can also, if you're in a populated area, competitive area, it's limited by your budget, not just the searches. So if you're in a small area with low population, imagine how many people are going and searching those keywords. And then if there's 3 or 4 orthodontists, you're all bidding. But then if you're in Miami, it's like you got people spending $20,000, $30,000 a month on paid ads with a heavy focus on Google. So again, the only way to get there, if you want to grow fast and be a volume clinic, volume practice, is meta ads. And so, a lot of the people who sing our praises, testimonials, case studies, I don't want to say it's always a big practice. It's just people, we call them easy growers. Some people think that's a weird term, but they have a growth mindset.
I was an easy grower in 5th grade because I ate a lot of oatmeal cream pies.
Yeah, there you go.
So
I knew you would come up with something.
There's something
special
there.
Around that. To go back to the persona, it is very important, and we've started to learn this. And even with us collaborating, it's like, hey, we need to drill down on this because there's potentially a lot of people we could have helped. We just didn't have the right approach because it's like, oh, well, here's what works. But if the practice has a different outcome, objective, and also the team is built a certain way, then you have to pick up on that early on and be flexible. That's something we were already starting to tackle and build strategies for. And then obviously we partnered. And so it becomes easier because collectively we can build these playbooks for different personas, and it doesn't have to be all, the way that you guys did it or the way that and even collectively we'll come up with more than 2 or 3 ways. We'll have 6 or 7 different playbooks.
Yeah, which is, I think, like the big idea that you and I, and also Alex and Justin and the people on our team have sort of like landed on is just like an orthodontist looks at a case and they don't just treatment plan it one way.
Right.
You know, because like you don't treat a class 2 like a class 3 or vice versa. We should be looking at the practice where they are, where they want to get, and then base the strategy on that, which sounds like super self-evident and obvious, but it's just taking some time to sort of figure that out, coming from different directions and kind of converging on the same idea, which is, between Meta, between Google, between long-term focused SEO strategies, like what is the right mix that will lead a practice from where they are right now to where they want to be. And sometimes that is, I just want to maintain where I'm at. I don't want to go back. I don't want to reverse, because we see, of course, clients come in all the time like, I was producing 2.5, and then I was producing 2.1, and then I was producing 1.4, and now I'm headed for 900,000. Like that's not the trajectory anyone wants to be on.
Right.
And digital marketing can be the means by which they get back to that 2.5 or even push to 3 or 4. But it's got to be the right mix, and it depends on how fast you want to get there.
Right.
And so I think where we've probably both missed the boat in different ways, I would say, of Neon Canvas. And it's not we haven't done meta ads. It's just we've not maybe pushed the gas at 100 miles per hour for that many clients.
It's the same thing with HIP with Google. Like we have a whole team that is a search paid media team. The issues have been created. Well, we kind of create an equal distribution of Meta and Google. So even though Google will still have a high focus on, there's still a high focus on Meta. And then therein lies the problem. Whereas, to fix that, you could have a high focus on Google and only just a small retargeting budget on Facebook. So you're retargeting the people that are hitting the website and hitting the Google ad landing pages, but it's not necessarily cold traffic.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. There's no focus there.
Yeah, and maybe talk about this for what it's worth is you alluded to it, is that no one goes to Meta, Facebook, Instagram, what have you, and searches. Now, an interesting side topic that's a little squirrel that I won't chase is younger generations are going to TikTok and searching.
They
so
are.
that will be a future of this. Of course, there's also AI. People are going less frequently, some of them,
we
myself
even
included.
Saw Reddit, huge. Yeah. We were pulling, which we'll show you later, sure. But I was shocked with what Zach was showing me.
I can't stand Reddit.
Me
but,
either. Hate it.
All power to those who like it. But the point is that where people go to answer a question at what's called the zero moment, which is the moment where they think, I need a new wallet, or man, I need a new black belt, like whatever the question is. And then they go to their place of commerce or place of figuring out that answer. Like my kid needs braces because my dentist told me, or because isn't it time? Or I need Invisalign, whatever the case may be. That's when they go. And that only happens so often. And it's a very targeted moment. It's a very important moment, that zero moment. The moment before that moment is when they're just on the internet and they're on YouTube or they're on Facebook or they're on Instagram or they're shopping or whatever. Like there are opportunities to capture that person there. But if you pick the right market and the right strategy, you're going to be able to inform that zero moment and actually force that zero moment ahead in their schedule.
Yeah.
So just so people understand that, I know you understand that. So it's really, it's a question of, on this theoretical timeline of someone potentially ever going to see an orthodontist, when do I want that moment where they fill out a lead to happen? And obviously, if you're capturing them on a non-commerce, non-zero moment stage on that timeline, which could be Facebook or Instagram, they're going to be less apt to actually follow through and show up and start, but a certain percentage will.
Right.
And it's not a bad percentage. And so then you have to look at, well, what did it cost to capture them in that place? And then how likely are they to convert? And do I have systems in place to support that? And I think that is where it gets interesting, is a lot of times don't have the systems, and just culturally it's different, because the patient that comes from this, from Meta to they fill out a lead and then you follow up and you schedule them, it's going to take more calls, more effort than someone who comes straight from a dentist or an internal marketing client. It's like the sister of somebody. Well, that's easy. And so I think our teams do get used to like working these easy leads that convert, and our TCs like those more, and I like them more.
Yeah.
And so I'd say
Who
it like
wouldn't?
this. Yeah, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
And so if you have a practice type that is happy to maintain with these dentist relationships and the community stuff that you do and the schools that are around you, great. There's no need for digital marketing.
And this is an interesting point, because it can also be a stair-step type of approach. If you have patience and you're in it for the long game and you're not really sure that you want to generate a lot of leads. Like, you don't have to start with everything. You know, you could start with web and SEO and then bolt on Google Ads, see how that does in tandem with kind of dialing in your referral network.
Yeah.
And then, okay, am I where I want to be, or do I actually want to grow more aggressively?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's look at getting serious on Meta. So it's not like you have to decide today or have a strategy today of all these things. You can be you can approach it with a little bit more patience, you know?
Yeah. Well, and nuance. I mean, it's a certainly more strategic and sophisticated, let's say, way of approaching it, as opposed to just thinking it's a hammer and a nail.
Yeah.
It's not.
And I do want to talk about kind of the, linear belief of, okay, spend some money on Meta, produce some leads. Largely, they're going to be bad leads, but we'll get a few. It's kind of this linear concept, even with Google. Okay, we'll spend on Google Ads. We'll get in front of the people who are searching, and then boom, they're going to come in. So, Zach, maybe we can pull up on screen the Time Magazine article. And this Time Magazine article, you'll laugh. You now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. And this goes through a study from Microsoft. Long story short, and I believe it's Nicholas Carr who published What the Internet's Doing to Our Brains. This was like 14 or 15 years ago.
Right?
Yeah, really bad. So Nicholas Carr was the first published author I read, and he actually spoke at my school. I went to SCAD in Savannah.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating on the studies of how stupid the internet is making most people. And it happens to all of us. I don't know if you ever just caught yourself scrolling and you go, wait, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And you were just like in a trance scrolling. And, it's interesting with orthodontists being so focused on things like science and anatomy. And, you don't really think about the anatomy of the brain and neurons and how our habits formed. And what the internet is doing is it's basically short-circuiting neurons. So I find myself doing this all the time with working, where I'll be preparing something, and I'll be preparing for a project, and then my phone will go off, and it'll be like, hey, I need to follow up on that. And then I'll get into that, and then some other alert will come up, and then an hour will go by. I'm like, oh, I need to be working on this other project, and it's just the patterns that are happening. So to go back to that Time article, it breaks down how humans have the attention span of 8 seconds and a goldfish is about 9 seconds.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we have enough empathy for people and behavior. And so someone could have the greatest intention opting in on a Meta ad, but if you have empathy for where they're at and that we all behave this way, I mean, even if I go to my phone and I just pull up today, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers in red, like the color red, not saved. And I deleted 2 voicemails this morning. I didn't even listen to them. And I'm not calling these numbers back, And so I think it's very important to understand we behave the same way as these bad leads in certain situations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If you have extreme empathy, your goal is to help as many people as possible. How do you need to approach that? What's the expectation? What's the mindset? And if you want to pull up the speed to lead stats, and I'm almost done with my monologue.
No, this is great. I totally agree, and I have lots of stuff I can say. The first thing, and then you can do your monologue, is my attention span, in fairness, has always been shorter than that of a goldfish. I'm probably pushing 2.5 seconds. So I just want to say, and it's not a competition.
Yeah. I started with the internet's making us stupid. I don't think we're stupid people. I was stupid
before the internet.
Yeah, but I don't think globally we're stupid.
No.
It's patterns and behaviors with certain things. Sure. And I think we could all agree in the 60s or the early 1900s, it'd be a lot easier to stay focused on one thing.
Totally.
Because you don't have all these distractions.
Yeah.
Right?
We have the capacity to be more intelligent now, but we sort of underpace our potential.
Yeah.
Because we're so distracted and we lack focus.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm kind of I like to dance with conspiracy theories sometimes. Yeah. But some people think that TikTok was created to make us dumber, and it's like
maybe so.
Even the TikTok
it's
effect
working.
of, you're on a reel. Is that what they're called on TikTok? Reels?
Now I feel like an old man. Are they called ticks? Are they called
TikToks?
talks?
Okay. Well,
Sorry.
Reels on Instagram kind of
TikToks.
function
Yep.
the same way. Stories. How long before you click or scroll or swipe to the next one? It's like, and you have like half a second or a second, and audio is so important and the visual is so important at the beginning to capture attention. But how much time do you have before a lead goes cold? Go to the next slide. This covers the first minute. Even look in the first couple seconds, and this goes back to the goldfish. And how do you handle leads who could have the best intention to becoming a patient in an environment like this? It becomes pretty overwhelming. And then if you go even further, this is from Harvard Business Review. Even look at 5 minutes versus 10 minutes in terms of contacting someone. And then the attempts, the number of attempts. We work with so many offices and we secret shop them. And offices will reach out 1 to 2 times. And we hear it all the time. Well, they didn't respond to my voicemail, didn't respond to my text. So I just moved them to bad lead. It's like, well, okay, let me get my own story. Every now and then I'll go back and work leads myself because I just like the game.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a lead who was on a webinar. While they were on a webinar, they go to our website and fill out a form. And hey, I want to set up a time to talk. That would be, okay, that's a warm lead.
Yeah.
Okay. This is for HIP. So we reach out over the course of a week about 12 times. 0 luck. So then I decide to take it to my iPhone instead of using Practice Beacon. And I just write the first name. Kyle ! Yes? ? And then I'm like, all right. So this starts dialogue, 8 or 10 messages in. And it's like, who is this again? And how can you help me? And it's like, hey, can we just jump on a quick call? It'll take 2 to 3 minutes. Can't talk right now, driving. I'm like, but you're texting me. This is odd. So anyway, it becomes very clear in the next message. I literally say, here's who I am. Here's what you were doing. Here's what you clicked on. Here's what you said. Do you still want to chat? We set up a discovery call. She became a buyer, closed the deal. I don't know that I have many clients who would go the distance on that.
Sure.
And so again, if you have that empathy and you put yourself in their shoes and you also think about how you behave, it changes a lot.
Yeah. Well, I have a personal story because we all love stories. And it's a story of me being a bad shopper, bad lead.
I knew you were a bad lead.
Of course, I'm a bad seed. I'm a bad lead. I think I'm a good read. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry. I went to a doctor and they were trying to schedule me for a procedure, and they called me every day for 5 days in a row. And did I ever answer it? No, because my phone's on Do Not Disturb. Did I ever listen to the voicemail? No, I read the transcript. Did I ever call them back? No. How did they get me scheduled? Somehow they found out my work number and called my wife, and she scheduled me. So
Wow.
it popped up on my calendar, and I was like,
So they were pretty good.
They were good. Yeah, and they scheduled me, and I went, and it was not a great experience because it's medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've waited for an hour, and then I waited for another hour, but the point is, I did schedule a procedure. They had a good follow-up system. They had people that actually cared, and I would have gotten around to it.
Sure,
but it was pretty proof positive. It's also proof positive that had they texted me and given me the ability to asynchronously connect with them, not over the phone, it would have gotten scheduled through me.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they'd had an online portal where I could have scheduled online, totally would have done it. And so that's another part of the conversation is phone, text, email, give people different options. I hate is a strong word, and it is appropriate. I hate being on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hard to do. I can't do it in the middle of the day. I'll text all day long.
Right.
So that's another thing.
I, too, have very similar stories, just like yours. I think it's important to also know within consumer behavior, when someone is reaching out, we like to run offers on Facebook ads. And again, we could talk about this because there's a big stigma around offers to get attention. And if I opt in, 500 off braces in that moment, in that first couple seconds is where I'm primed to be reached and scheduled. So you're right. If a text comes instantly to my phone and I have the ability to do that, it bumps up the likelihood. But, the other day I opened up my phone and there was 25 texts. Someone from you and, a few other people. But then one or two were like from a chiropractor or something else. I never responded to those because I'm just inundated.
Sure.
Just to go back to the first couple seconds, just like you talked about with life, you're a busy guy. You're seeing a lot of patients. To write you off as a bad lead, if your wife didn't exist and, your business number didn't exist, how long would it have taken you? 3, 4, 5 months, maybe?
Could have.
Could have.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens with most consumers. Yep. And so if we have a process for that, now, again, people who have had the best intention, and I think to some degree we're not perfect. We could have certainly done a better job with certain clients. That being said, I do also believe we made bad investments to some degree. And I'm not trying to talk bad about anyone.
No, it's good. I think reflection on the things that we could have done better, that is in the nature of HIP and Neon Canvas coming together, is it gives us an opportunity for self-reflection and for improvement and to aspire to something better. If we didn't do that, what was the point of doing it?
Through the bad investments, we learned, these are all bad leads. None of them want to schedule. Well, we started our own scheduling team. Yeah. And, right now it's small. There's a percentage of practices that we have that are on the scheduling team, and, we're working their leads. And the opportunity comes up sometimes when people say, hey, all these leads are bad. Hey, we'll give you free follow-up for a couple months and let us prove to you that it may not just be the leads. Now, is anything 100%? No. But by and large, most of the time, we will still schedule people in wildly higher percentages than they were. They could have been at like 0% or 5 or 10%. We come in and instantly go to 20% now of your leads are being scheduled. And this just happened with somebody who came by our booth at AAO, great guy, great doctor, couldn't get anyone scheduled. Now our team started getting them scheduled. Then he couldn't start anybody, and so it's like another doctor, a peer who's a client of ours and has had great success, started coaching him at the booth, which I love to see. It's like if I can get someone else to validate and kind of preach what I've been talking about for the past decade versus me having to do it, I think it becomes a lot more real, especially when it's an orthodontist who can empathize with where this other orthodontist is at,
Yeah.
Again, it's not 100%, but it does bring up the point of if you have the system and the right mindset, like our schedulers, they know they're going to have to call a lot of people and they're not going to reach them. They're going to get hangups. They're going to get no's. They're going to get stops. But the amount of new patients they get is worth it, and it pays dividends for our practices.
Lifetime value, for what that's worth, is a topic that's a big deal to me that I think is relevant to this. And that is just to say that the relative value of what we're selling as orthodontists is so high that these systems are easily justified. Mm-hmm. Okay, so whatever it costs to capture a lead, to get that lead to show up, let's say it's $50, $100, $150, even if it's $200, if the lifetime value, and what that means is, yes, the start carries value, but also the patients that patient might refer, or the replacement retainers they ultimately need, or the retreatment they might need, or if you sell retainer plan or whitening, or maybe you have oral surgery services, like all those different things, that equates to a certain dollar amount. And let's say make it the profit, and the number that I usually land on is about $4,500 lifetime value, which is going to get realized over the lifetime, 20 years maybe, but most of that is realized in that first 2 years. If that's sitting on the ground, how would you treat it? Man, I would jump on the ground and pick it up. I mean, you see people at concerts where they'll throw out dollar bills and people just dive on the ground for dollar bills. We've got $4,500 when someone calls in or texts in or requests an appointment. That's a pretty powerful image. And so maybe we should do that for our team members, is just throw like a stack of hundreds on the ground and see would they pick it up? So I think also we have team members that are probably required to be doing too much at the same time, and that maybe are not set up from a training perspective or a systems perspective to handle these leads in the way that would be ideal.
Okay, so this is a really good point. Most practices that I walk into, there's a lot of split roles. Yeah. It's kind of like musical chairs. Like, all right, you're going to do a little bit of this, and then you're going to jump over here. And when I go in, and I just did this yesterday with the practice, I remove everyone's name, and I kind of park that in a roster. And then I build an org chart with only seats. And what are the seats that are needed in your practice? Just remove people for 5 minutes. Let's just build the seats. Then we plug those names back in, and every time responsibilities change. Well, especially if I interview the team, because I can get a read on people. And then also if you do something like predictive index where you can see where that person shines naturally, are they extroverted? Are they introverted? Are they going to be resilient and love to talk to people on the phone? Or by lunchtime, are they going to be sick of talking? All these things matter.
Yeah.
So we'll move things around. It always changes. And what I like to do, certainly you can't do this in a small practice, and maybe you can speak to how this works as you grow. You can start to have a more specialized team. If I have 2 people TCing and, they're kind of splitting the time, and one will come be my clinical assistant, well, which one has the highest conversion rate? This happened in a practice in Tennessee where one was converting close to 80%, the other was at 50. It's like, well, if they're kind of jumping between roles, the one with 50 actually wants to work just full-time in the clinic. The one at 80 wants to work full-time as the TC, and then we can incentivize her more so there's more upside there as well, And so now it becomes much more strategic, and the people in the seats are happier. And I would argue, too, this would happen with Harrison. If Harrison's closing deals for HIP, last thing I want to do is like, hey, man, I need you to file some papers, or I need you to jump on.
He wouldn't do it.
Yeah, or it would be the worst use of his time, because what that does is it breaks the flow state, and then they kind of have to come back and get in that groove again, And so let's find where someone shines, where they can grow, and put them there. Now, you speak to how that's not really realistic maybe in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's partly, let's just be honest, it's not realistic because as business owners, we are not necessarily always great at working on the business. We're working in the business, or in some sense under the business, because the weight of it is so, heavy. And we also have not taken any courses in business or business management or team dynamics or whatever. And so the orthodontist who doesn't have an office manager, let's say, doesn't know what to do. Now, if they have an office manager, a lot of times he or she might also not have that training. It may have been someone that just elevated through the ranks. And so it's not to say that we're bad at what we do. It's just that sometimes we're not equipped to even know what that is. And so that's why consultants or bringing someone in can be helpful, because they have an outside view that is clean, that's not biased, and it's not informed by sometimes what people do in the office. It wasn't strategic. It just sort of happened. It's sort of like organically, like an amoeba, just sort of stretched out and occupied that position. And so I think to sort of regroup and to kind of push everything aside and to build a better foundation makes all the sense in the world. It can also be difficult because sometimes people are used to what they've been doing and they don't want to change, and but I think it begins and ends with the leader. It begins and ends with the bus driver, and that bus driver can decide really what happens on that bus in that organization. So sometimes it's just like a podcast like this that might help to sort of spark, I should probably do that. It's not that hard. And sometimes people will be energized by it. Like you said, like they can find their flow. They can find, the Colby test, which is a test that shows how people.
That's a great one.
Yeah, how they actually like respond to work and how they approach work. And if you can find a quick start that likes to do things quickly and give them quick start type work, like following up on leads, let's say. And if you can find a fact finder who needs to be on projects because they love to research and do that kind of stuff, and maybe they're in opposite roles presently, you reverse that and they're going to be like, it's called conative. They're going to be conatively more aligned. Now, again, running a practice, you have a limited sample size. If you had 200 employees, you could put them right where they need to
Sure.
go. If you have
Easier said
15,
than
it's
done.
easier said than done, obviously. And also, people are not chess pieces. They're not perfectly formed in a certain way. They don't have an exact mode of transportation in chess, or whatever, or in working. They don't have an exact personality that fits in just one box. And then also sometimes relationships expire, and people who were once great at one other thing, maybe they're not now because they're dealing with, financial issues or relationship issues. And so you have to have empathy for your team member in the same way you have empathy for the lead. And this is a long answer.
But I like it.
But you
It's
get
really
you get
good.
the point. There's a lot of considerations that go into it. But I would say all that stuff aside, what is the biggest block to success in these ways or to optimizing your workforce? The leader deciding that it's an issue and acting on it. And that could take an hour. But it's just we're focused on other stuff.
Yeah. And let's kind of bring it back to the persona type of practice and the paid ad strategy. I think it's really important to try to identify who you are and what type of practice you're going to not necessarily be happy in, but to some degree.
No, sure. I think you should enjoy it. It should, in the same way that we're talking about aligning people with the type of work they're doing, your practice should be aligned with what you want.
Right.
Someone who does not thrive seeing 100 patients a day can limit that. They can limit it to 60 patients a day. And to be fair, one way to do that is maybe you don't go in network and maybe you do have a little bit higher fee. And in that sense, to be able to start enough of those patients, digital marketing can fuel that. I mean, my best opportunity to get someone to pay me full fee on an elective procedure is to get in more new patients. You may have a lower conversion rate, but if you're higher, on the production side, because each patient that you start has to pay more, you might be able to achieve your goals and still only see 60 or 70 patients a day. And so it is all interconnected for sure. And so high lead volume does not necessarily mean low fee or whatever,
Right.
And conversion rate traditionally it's this big heralded stat, and I don't think it's actually a stat that matters. It matters, right? It tells you how effective the treatment coordinator is or how effective you as a doctor is. But really what matters is, like, from a business standpoint, is how much am I getting paid for each case that I'm starting and finishing and seeing 12 times.
Yeah. So we can go to now the promo.
Okay.
Or I like the word promo, discount,
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's a big topic.
Yeah. And a lot of people who do not love HIP, let's just say, or haven't enjoyed the experience, a lot of times I see, people will send me, hey, just so you're aware, this is being said or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes back to the promo. And I get it. You guys don't want to be seen as like a discount shop, too largely. And there is a strategy for that, which is low fee. And that can work really well. Again, to go back to your persona and the type of practice you want to build. We've worked with people who are low fee and they've done really well. But the rest of the industry and orthodontists, they worked so hard to get where they are. They don't just want to like discount and be seen as like the discount shop.
Sure.
We'll show something on screen, Zach. I'll send it to you. Essentially, it's from the book, I believe, Misbehaving, which is talking about economics and pricing strategies. And it walks through the story of JCPenney, where they always did dollar off, rebates, whatever. Well, and this is when they were thriving, okay? A new CEO came in. This is probably in the early 90s. And he said, let's just take the price to where the floor is. So instead of giving all these discounts and promos and keeping up with coupons and doing direct mail, like, let's just, the price is the price, and let's just set it low. It literally tanked. I believe in a couple years, it's like sales were literally cut in half. And this is backed up with tons of studies in the book, Misbehaving. People like an offer. This is why Mercedes runs rebates and savings.
Sure.
This is why the explosion partly in electric cars happened, is look at the tax savings that you get. Justin bought a car he bought a Porsche. He was going to get gas, and they're like, hey, if you buy the electric model, $7,500 rebate.
Sure.
It's like, oh, okay. My point is, we'll work with people who have some of the highest fees. $7,000, 8,500. Maybe on the West Coast, we worked close to 10,000, and $1,000 off 10,000 is better than marketing what that price would be just without the promo or discount. Okay. The argument becomes, what does it do to my brand? What are your thoughts?
Oh man, that's a good question. I honestly am not a fan of doing discounts, and I think it's reflective of my personal biases, and that it's healthcare and that it shouldn't be discounted, or which I don't know what the consumer, we'll use that word because we're talking business, but the patient or the parent thinks about it, and if they think it's that deep. I think of it in a deep sort of philosophical way.
You're very connected to it.
I am connected to it, but I also have to recognize, as everyone watching this should, is that how I view things is not how all my potential patients and their parents think. At the same time, I'm a shopper in other ways, and I love discounts and coupons, and every single thing I ever buy online, I search for a promo code, and they never work, but I still search for them. So I am then a walking contradiction, because I love promos and discounts, and sales initiate me to buy when I see them, and yet I feel like it's bad for my practice. So I have to somehow be able to remedy that. Now, at the same time, I also say, of those that are critical of discount-based or promo-based advertising in orthodontics, how many of those are on in-network insurance? What is in-network insurance? It is you discounting your fee to be on a published list of providers.
That's right.
How is that not the same thing? And actually, that discount, what does it usually equate to? More than $750. So I think it may be just the idea of a sale or a discount. People think it looks desperate. And maybe it does. I mean, honestly, this would be something like, we're positioned, why don't we just research these things in a sort of evidence-based way and see? Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, maybe we will. I will say, for the people who embrace it, again, it goes back to who you are, what's your mindset and attitude. Same thing with your team. What's their mindset and attitude? Are they bought into your vision? Depending on what your vision is, you may need to be okay with a promo. Now, to your point, you've been able to build the practice that you enjoy, supports your team, without having to do that. And so both can work. I think the beautiful thing of what we're going to cover largely with the podcast and our books, and we may do magazines and blogs, and it's not about being right or wrong. And that has become the argument I've seen with this topic, and both could be right. There could be 5-10 different ways to do it. No one has to be right or wrong. It's just, what's the model? Who are you? And are you going to see this thing through and be okay with the good and the bad?
Yeah. And in fairness, it's funny that someone, and I'm not trying to pick on people, I'm just trying to be open because this applies to me. We don't like promos on Facebook ads or Google ads or somewhere on our website. But what happens when they get to the practice? Oh, it's the end of the month. We're not hitting our goals. Tell them it's $500 off. It's same day start discount. Yeah. Well, what is that? So I mean, I think some of this is just an unwillingness to stand away from what you're doing and revisit it and look at your foundations, look at where you started, why you think this, what are your biases, and say, well, that could work. I also think maybe, for what it's worth, people think it's dishonest to raise your fee and then give a discount. But you know who does that? Every business. I mean, that's if you look at Black Friday prices, you've seen them pull the little thing away and it's the same price as it was. So.
And I'm not saying to do that.
Sure.
And people ask us that question, well, do we raise our fee? Yeah. And it's well, let's talk about this ethically. When's the last time you did raise your fees?
Sure.
5 years ago by 5%. It's well, have you looked at housing? Have you looked at eggs? Have you looked at toilet paper? Might be time to raise your fees.
Sure.
And then a whole nother way to capture even more revenue is, okay, well, what's your retainer plan look like? What's whitening? What if we could bake that into the treatment, and now we're able to add $900 or $1,100 to the fee, and then it's $500 off, And then on the back end, you're still making $600 more. So there's ways to do this ethically without being like, okay, well, if I want to grow, maybe I need to do a discount. I'm going to raise my fee to do the discount.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then lower it back down.
Right.
Or, yeah.
And we should say we're not attorneys. We're not advising you to,
That's when you know you're talking about good stuff on a podcast, when that line comes out.
Well, do your own research. And I always like to say, like, don't just take what we're saying, like actually be thoughtful about this.
Well, if you're going to be unethical about anything you do in business, it will catch up with you.
Right.
That's the point. And so I think the degree to which someone assumes that advice we're giving is unethical is the wrong assumption.
Right.
We've been doing this for a while, and I've been doing orthodontics for a while. And especially in a small community, I say especially, which community is not small? I mean, they're all small in their own way. It's going to catch up with you eventually. Mm-hmm. And so, try not to do anything unethical. We want to do things that work. We want to do things that grow our practice if we want it to grow, or maintain our practice if we want to maintain it. None of us want to shrink as a practice, I don't think,
So let's just bring up on the screen and show the difference between a focus on meta ads, what that looks like in terms of Practice Beacon and ROI that we've tracked. And then let's show a Google Ads campaign and maybe a practice where we had more of a focus on Google Ads and the ROI. So you can kind of see the difference. Again, both can work. There is no one strategy. It's really about, and this is why I love us working together, is we're going to be a lot more intentional about discovering who you are and what playbook fits where you are now, but more importantly, where you want to be. Yeah. So starting with the end in mind and working backwards. And I feel like we've always kind of done that.
Yeah.
I just think we'll be able to do it a lot better.
Yeah. And I think while we have always done it, I don't think we've communicated it well enough.
That's true.
And that needs to be a top-down thing where everyone on the team understands that and is communicating that to clients.
Great point.
And I think doctors need to understand that they are empowered in this relationship to dictate the direction of these things and not just take it as a one-size-fits-all. It's never been, or it's never intended to be that way. But, of course, without tight systems and good communication, things kind of reduce to that. In the orthodontic practice, too, it can.
Yeah. So if you've liked this episode, I think a good place too to reach out to us. Find us on Instagram. You can DM us. You can go to a website, subscribe, because there's going to be a lot more value we're going to be dropping.
I like smoke signals. If you can do those are great.
Yeah, do that.
You can write a message on a little paper airplane and throw it in my direction.
Pigeon,
Yeah, pigeon is great. Carrier pigeons are awesome. You don't get enough of those these days. Someone call me on a payphone.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll answer that.
This should just, a song should start playing as it fades out as we're just talking about different methods of communication.
Even an email would be ignored.
Somebody could take one of those fortune teller things that we used to make in 3rd grade. And I open it.
Just drive to your practice. That'd be
Drive to my practice, throw a brick through the window with a message written on it. A message in a bottle. Because we're on the beach. We're in Pensacola.
Put it in the Gulf of America. I'll find it.
Definitely edit that out.